Okay, so I've just finished counting the clothing that I bought last year. Wow, okay. There's a ridiculous amount of clothing, and I will be evaluating my whole life.
This is Do This One Thing, where we break down the world's most complicated issues into individual actions that you and I can take to make a difference.
And what are you going to teach me today?
Today, we're going to look at the environmental impact of fashion.
I have literally never thought about that.
Okay, so I bought this last year, so 1, 2, 3.
I asked you to count how many items of clothing you bought last year.
You did. Yes, you did.
What was the number?
The number was 51.
51, okay.
Yeah, I was actually quite surprised by how many that was.
And then everything here, which is a lot of clothes.
How do you feel about that? Do you feel good? Do you feel...
I thought it would be more like 30. I guess the smaller items kind of let you down, like things like that you need to get more often, like pairs of underwear and stuff like that.
Right, jackets. I bought this last year. I bought this last year.
You're embarrassed by 51. I bought 106 items of clothing last year.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. I absolutely am dumbfounded. It includes a lot of things.
Okay.
I did end up buying, I had new gym gear.
Right.
Bras, tights, underwear, socks.
Yeah. The perishables.
I did go through a wardrobe refresh last year.
Okay. It's your money. You can buy what you want, I guess.
I guess I did think about it and was like, that is a ridiculous amount. Not just in terms of the money, there's a waste of money, but also I was just thinking what does that do for the environment?
Yeah, true.
Fast fashion is built on the idea that clothes are a bit more disposable, they're more on trend for that moment, but then you kind of get rid of them.
I definitely do that. I feel like there's a sale every other day, whatever shop I go to, and as long as it's cheap and affordable and I like it, I'm gonna buy it. That's the only thing I really consider.
Well, exactly. In the UK, on average, people buy 33 items of clothing per year.
Okay, so still way less than what we bought.
Way less than what we bought, but the fast fashion and our consumption of fashion is increasing constantly.
Sure.
So I wanted to do a deep dive into this and figure out how do my fashion purchases impact the environment? I'm part of the problem. I buy way more clothing than the average person does.
Same, apparently.
But I want to better myself, and I feel like I want to understand what the issues are, and I want to figure out what on earth I can do as an individual consumer. I found some things out that I'd love to share with you. Ready to learn?
Yeah, let's do it. Take me with you.
Great. When I started looking into this, I was like, I don't really actually understand. I understand why plane travel isn't good. I understand why cars aren't great, but I don't understand fashion.
I don't know, sometimes I feel like it's too much for me to even know where to start, so I'm just gonna order the t-shirt and not worry about it. Which sounds really bad, but I don't, you know what I mean?
No, I totally know what you mean. And also I think that when you look at a piece of clothing, you're just looking at, do I like this? Will it fit me?
Yeah.
Does it fit with other things in my wardrobe? You're just not thinking about where it came from.
Totally.
And what it took to get here. The fashion industry produces 10% of all carbon emissions, greater than the emissions from all international flights and all shipping combined.
How is that possible? I don't understand.
I just don't. When I learnt this stat, I was like, what?
Yeah.
I'm trying to use public transport and think about what I eat, but then I'm just buying loads of clothing because I'm oh, that doesn't really have an impact, when actually it's much more of an impact than the flights I take. Clearly, globally, there's a huge issue here. What about in the UK?
Okay.
So in the UK, the amount of clothing bought every month is greater than the emissions from flying around the world 900 times.
What?
Yeah.
That's just a ridiculously high amount.
Right?
And that's just in the UK?
Just in the UK, in 1 month.
Okay, this is a way bigger issue than I think I had first thought.
So right now, fashion accounts for about 10% of our carbon budget. By 2050, if we carry on at the rate that we're going, it will be 26%.
It's crazy that that's just being allowed to happen.
Yeah, it's fashion just kind of skirting under the radar. It's no, just don't pay attention to us.
Yeah.
Looking into just one cotton shirt, the amount of water it takes to make that item is 2,700 litres of water.
What?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
That is the equivalent to the amount of water an average person drinks in 2.5 years.
So 2.5 years worth of water is this one t-shirt?
Yeah.
Right. So clearly that's a huge amount of water, but I guess to me CO2 emissions a really obviously bad thing. Is water consumption that bad?
Unfortunately, I looked into it a little bit more, and we're kind of running out of water. Cities, including London, Sao Paulo, Jakarta, Tokyo as well, could run out of drinking water.
When?
Within the next few decades. This is a huge, huge problem. Again, it's like most of our water consumption actually comes from agriculture, from industry, from the food and the products that we consume. Surely the most important thing is that as humans we have water to drink versus like using it on a cotton t-shirt.
Yeah, absolutely.
So looking at the carbon emissions of that t-shirt as well, the amount of carbon it takes to make that t-shirt is equivalent to driving about 35 miles in a car.
Okay, so we've got 2.5 years worth of water. So we've got like an Olympic swimming pool. We've got a ride in the car down to Brighton. What else? Like how many more things can I waste so I can wear a t-shirt?
Exactly, and it just like the more you start to realize that that's kind of building up, the more you're like, okay, so one purchase of mine actually plays a massive role in the environment, in our climate.
Yeah.
I then started to look more into fast fashion. And so actually this is where I learned something really new. Most of our clothing now is made from synthetic fibres such as polyester. And I was like, okay, so what does this mean?
What does that mean?
I actually spoke to an expert at the Grantham Institute.
Polyester is a man-made synthetic fibre and it comes from plastic basically. And we get plastic from crude oil, so fossil fuels. So the first issue with polyester is the fact that if you're buying anything plastic, and so if you're buying polyester, you're supporting the fossil fuel industry, which obviously itself is an issue. So I guess if you buy something polyester, it's like a double whammy. You not only support the fossil fuel industry, the most polluting industry, you're then supporting the garment industry, which is the second most polluting industry. So yeah, it's a bit of a lose-lose situation on buying it. Obviously it's not renewable because it's made of crude oil. And obviously all those clothes have to go somewhere. You know, textile waste now is huge. So much of it ends up in landfill. People donate clothes and they think that that's, you know, it's okay because they've given it to charity. But charities can only shift so much clothes. They can only sell so much. I think there's a real disconnect when, you know, you throw something in the bin. There's this idea that you throw it away, but there is no away. And I think that's such a good saying because people need to sort of start making that connect that when you throw it away, it is going somewhere. Even though we think of growth as not having limits, the environment does. And so I think that that's one of the things we really need to consider when we're buying clothes.
Most of our clothing is now made from oil and it's non-biodegradable. So every piece of polyester clothing that has been produced is still on our planet today. Once I finished this research, I felt a lot like what I think you're feeling right now, which is super overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, there's so many different elements to consider. What that does do is give us like some really nice insight into what we can do. Supply and demand like all play a role in each other. We are really powerful in how we can shape the market. If we say that we don't want clothing from this source, or if you cut back a little bit, that can have a huge, huge impact.
Yeah.
If you're going to do just one thing, buy one less item of clothing a year and swap it out for a used item.
Oh, okay. I thought this was going to be like something really hard. I can do that.
If everybody in the UK buys one used item this year instead of new, the carbon emissions saved is equivalent to taking 150,000 cars off the road for a year.
Seriously?
Yeah.
That's one less item.
Yeah.
If the government said something like, we're going to take 150,000 cars, you know, off the road, it would be like a 20-year plan. But you're telling me that I just like buy one less t-shirt and we can do the same thing.
Yeah, and not even that you have to buy one less t-shirt, like buy it from a charity shop instead.
Yeah.
Buy it from a thrift shop instead.
That is insane.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I will 100%. I'll buy two less.
Exactly.
There you go. It's like 300,000.
It feels really complicated.
Yeah.
It feels like this huge, overwhelming issue, but it also shows how much of an impact we can make with this one tiny, tiny, tiny change.
Yeah.
Like, do this one thing, buy one for your item this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you stop shopping, we could probably do the same thing, but you know.